Amazing Grace is not just a song for funerals. I think it's very important to keep that in mind and to sing it every now and again because grace is so important in our lives. So sometimes this job, my job, feels redundant. And that's not a complaint. It's just that I imagine that most of you already know most of the stuff you hear me say every Sunday. On the other hand, it does then seem that redundancy is not so bad and may in fact be necessary. In fact, I'm not only fairly certain you already know all the messages that I reinforce up here every Sunday, I'm pretty convinced that most of you even know the secret of life. I'm pretty sure that most of us know the answers to the ethical and spiritual questions that we lug with us every day like overstuffed luggage. And I'm almost certain that the wisdom needed to dispel the frustration that encumbers us and encumbers our spirits is already within us. Now, I don't know whether it is inherent or inherited or not. If it is not inherent, then I don't know when along the way we absorb these answers, but my guess is that it's pretty early. Of course, this begs the question, if we know the answers, why aren't we living like it? Why do we lose our cool? Why don't we treat ourselves and others with compassion first? Why don't we all look like Gandhi? I mean, if most of us know the secret of satisfaction, as I suppose we do, then why are most of us usually a hot mess? If we have wisdom, why are we so at a loss? Why are we still on this quest? I can see the clockwork ticking above your heads, and I know that you guys know the answers. I know that you have ideas about these questions. As for me, my first guess would be to investigate the fields of abuse. A person involved in a toxic relationship, be it with another person or a substance like food or booze, often knows that halting or getting control of that relationship is the answer. So the answer is known, and yet one is frustrated in its pursuit. And so putting this back in the context of being eluded by the answers that I already have, this makes me wonder if I am addicted to my own irresponsibility or my own inadequacy. Or perhaps I have convinced myself, in spite of what I know to be true, that the way that I am living is the only way, and changing it would destroy it entirely. That is to say, destroy my life. Or perhaps I am in a terror at the prospect of spiritual success. I'm afraid. What would I do? What must I do? What would the world ask of me if I lived the wisdom of my bones? So this is a sort of quasi-psychological analysis. It's made clearly from the armchair, but it is psychological in nature. So I have a non-psychological diagnosis as well. So to recap, the question is, if we know the answers, well, I'll keep it personal so as to not falsely incriminate any of you saints. If I know the secret and the answers and possess the wisdom to live a life of deep satisfaction, peace, and resolve, why do I continue to operate in a way that is out of step? Why am I missing the mark if I know that I can hit the target? Well, I'm either hindered by a biochemical or learned impediment, which is the psychological sort of diagnosis, or, and here's the non-psychological diagnosis, I'm lazy. And when I say lazy, the depths of my laziness in this regard are truly mind-boggling. And here's why, and this is the kicker. The only thing required of me in order to step off the wheel of fortune and into the serene state of self-possession, to step out of the whirlwind and into the power of presence, the only thing that I am required to do is stop. I am, and perhaps you are, and if so, then we are too lazy to not do anything. That was a really difficult sentence to write. I'm still not sure that came out right, but I hope it did come out right. And so, like, how lazy is that? I'm too lazy to stop. Too lazy to rest. I'm too lazy to sit still. So, being that we are inherently knowledgeable about this stuff, we also know that in stopping, the depths will automatically bubble up. So the salvific wisdom within us will not, upon sitting, immediately arise to consciousness. We have, after all, piled the ruins of our personal civilizations upon our depths. But given time, they will arise. And that means that sitting still is an invitation to honest self-reflection. And this will require some work. And so now we're back to fear and laziness. You see, sitting still, stopping, and resting, it makes room. And so don't take my word for it. I'm not saying anything new here after all. You're hearing Lao Tzu and the Buddha right now as well. At least then. You're also hearing yourself here, I imagine. But don't take your word for it either. You have to do it. Or stop doing it. Be still. Be quiet. Now, contrary to what I frequently like to say up here, I do not want you to do this right here and right now. I don't think you can do this right here, and I don't want you to get up and leave just yet. I'm actually just getting started. You see, stillness and stopping and all of that have a natural consequence in the human animal. Stillness yields observation. The observation of the world, which is really observation of your senses, which is the observation of relationships, which is observation of the self, so far as there can be said to be such a thing. Stillness invites you to attend, and attention opens the door into beauty. Now, this practice may in fact immediately reveal to you some things that are not beautiful. Some things that are unjust, or oppressive, or unhealthy. But when one is living into one's wisdom, the hope is that these vile circumstances shall be viewed from a place of spiritual understanding, and the way ahead, the way toward justice and health, will be clear. That's the hope. And perhaps that is the hypothesis. So the traction for this hypothesis comes from the understanding that by stopping, we make room for observation and attention. And by observing and attending, we step into beauty. And we do this, I believe, because in moments of observational stillness, we become increasingly aware of the gifts that abound all around us. We become increasingly aware of the gifts that we have been given. In observational stillness, we become increasingly aware of the grace that courses through our lives and through our very beings. And from this perspective, we are compelled to see the simple, marvelous gifts we have gained even from our pain, even from our loss and inadequacy. We are able to identify gifts that we have that we did not know that we had. We are able at last to be grateful for these unexpected and unlooked for gifts, and gratitude will take us a turn deeper yet. So in observational stillness, we become increasingly aware of our own gifts, that is aware of the gifts that are ours to give, and the gifts that we have been giving all along. We become aware of our contingency, of how dependent we are on our circumstance, and we become aware of our potency, of how we affect the circumstances around us. And we do so from the perspective of one who is engaged by the beauty of being. So engaged by the beauty of being, we recognize grace and become grateful. In gratitude, we give back. And you may be fortunate enough in every aspect, or almost every aspect of your life, so this talk about giving back seems easy enough. On the other hand, sometimes of the same person, you may be on your last leg, clinging to a final shred of patience, or sanity, or sobriety, or interest. Even then, you still have something to give. Your perspective, your humor, your sorrow, your faith. Any number, or the very last. You still have a gift. And in giving, consider this nugget of wisdom, ancient of origin. The phrase, "and they shall give," in Hebrew is v'natnu, which in Hebrew is spelled Vav Nun Tav Nun Vav. Or to transliterate that, it is V in T in V. It's a palindrome. It reads the same front to back. And they shall give, embedded in the language. It goes both ways. Such is the flow of generosity and gratitude. When you give, when you observe, when you quiet. So last week we discussed how gratitude affects those giving thanks. And this week we come to understand that quite similarly, generosity affects the giver. Of course, I imagine that you already know this. Some of you know it because it is already a part of your behavior. The rest of us know it in the way that we already know the secret of the good life without actually living the good life. So here is your opportunity. I invite you to do nothing. And in doing nothing, discover what is real, what is effective, to discover your gifts and respond from the perspective of beauty, which is a perspective that you already have. May it be so. Amen.